So our first category today is inclusion. And so our first presenter, welcome Jordan.
Hi all. My name is Jordan. I am a senior this year in neuroscience and cognitive science. And I completed the certificate in developmental disabilities last year, the undergraduate certificate. So my project today is evaluating the inclusion and accessibility for individuals with disabilities at Reed Park Zoo, and this is part of my senior thesis. So why am I doing this? So Reed Park Zoo and other similar organizations are looking to increase accessibility and inclusivity at their locations. And this is extremely important because participations in these leisure activities, so going to the zoo, museum, aquarium, park, anything like that, it's important in developing many developmental skills. Such as developing relationships, problem solving, planning, skills such as that. Involvement in family recreation, like I said before, it also helps individuals develop relationships between the family and with friends. And then by making changes to increase access, all individuals can be fully included at the Reed Park Zoo. So how did I do this? First, I performed a literature review using 16 peer-reviewed articles. I did interviews with 8 different organizations, including museums, zoos, and aquaria. I myself performed an observation of the Reed Park Zoo, and then I sent a survey out to visitors who came over a 2-month period from December 2020 to February 2021. And so what did I find? I found that in general, zoo accessibility and welcomeness were very highly rated by individuals going to the zoo. There were a couple of barriers that were found, including some physical barriers such as railing heights being at the perfect view to obstruct someone who's in a wheelchair. There were some sensory issues found, including like loud noises underneath some of the overhangs in the exhibits. And then in general, when talking to the zoo staff themselves, there were some financial barriers on why certain accommodations could not be completed at this time. And then it was also found that accommodations provided by the Reed Park Zoo were rated very well, but there were improvements needed. So for example, people really appreciated the accessible restrooms, but they were saying certain locations of items in these restrooms maybe could be moved to make it easier. So what are some recommendations that I have? In general, I would improve the accessibility webpage and other online content. This can help with allowing individuals to have a better idea of what they're what to expect when they attend the zoo. I would increase the amount of and improve the quality of signage and maps at the zoo. It was hard to find a lot of the maps in the zoo and to access it on your phone. In general, I would like to see if it's possible to increase accessibility for those who are hearing and visually impaired through ASL translation, Braille signs, audio tours, and anything else that would help include individuals with those disabilities. And I would also, like I said before, the railings are at that perfect height to obstruct view. I would remove or adjust those railings and plantings that block the visibility. And those are some of the main recommendations that I came up with. So I would like to thank the Reed Park Zoo, Dr. Olin and JC for all of their contributions to help me with this project.
Thank you, Jordan. All right. Our next presenter is Nicholas.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Nicholas Marcel. I am currently a senior at the University of Arizona. I am in the majoring in neuroscience and cognitive science as well. And I'm also part of the SNOR and USAID, or the certificate program. And my focus is on, say, job coaching and kind of finding employment services for people with disabilities and seeing kind of what barriers it takes to get into employment and how to retain it. This is my poster here. So basically summary is kind of learning a lot about like policies and like various scopes of employment, whether it's on the local scale or possibly national. I think policy is something I do want to look at in the future, not just for people with disabilities, but just for people in general within healthcare. I think my experience this semester was a really good way to show that. And according to the methods, so I was hired at UCP SA and Workability, or stands for United Cerebral Palsy of Southern Arizona. And it's a very good institution. I really like the place. The people I met have been wonderful, and I learned a lot about what it takes to collaborate with other workers and also how to job coach and job shadow. And I think the takeaway that I found from the experience was the hiring process and all the training. I would say it was rather extensive, but I think it's for the better because there's a lot of information that needed to be focused on. I think one of the ones that I remembered was sensitivity on the UCP side. Basically, it was a pretty long module, kind of like talking about what it takes to engage with people with disabilities and how to be inclusive and make sure that they're doing okay, which I think is really important because especially with certain disabilities, everyone's a little different based on severity, et cetera. And knowing like where they stand, like where they're at, it's really important to kind of like gauge that and be flexible. So I think that's where sensitivity is involved. I think sensitivity can be synonymous with awareness. So I think that's something that is really important for right now. So I think that's a really good module. Also the AZ DDD system of like what it takes to like work as a job coach and work within AZ specifically, and also how to be a direct care worker or DCW, and like knowing how to take care of the dishes and how to support the member and the most effective methods to do so. On the workability side, I learned more about supported employment principles, disability benefits, and job development coaching. So I think, as mentioned before, I kind of think of it as job development is like before they get the job, and then job retention is when they currently have the job or looking for future jobs. And job coaching can help with really any of that. And I've seen some parts where I like job shadowed for someone and they really knew what they were doing. Like they were very skilled, actually kind of there, like it's their world, I'm just living in it, just kind of like supporting them in that sense. And there's others where maybe they need certain training on building a resume or finding the correct words to showcase their experience. And that's where I can also get involved. And a lot of it was through one-on-one support, which I think is really important to have that connection with someone and to make sure that they're comfortable reaching out to someone and asking questions. I think it's very important for any job. And then I also completed like admin tasks to like officially close out a member. So once they're done with their services, they had enough hours with UCP and workability to the point where, hey, they're doing really good. We see them as an independent worker. So now they no longer need our services at the moment, kind of filling it out using a survey. Oh, how would you like our experience? Is there something that we can improve on for future clients, stuff like that? And then they're on their merry way. And then the findings that I saw were, I feel like workability services were rated highly favorable in both job placement and retention. I felt like members, they felt like workability prepared them for job searching in the future. So, and again, everyone's a little different, but it kind of gives them the tools to know where to look for and like know exactly who to go for, because it's been said that about 70% of the jobs are on the hidden market and that require networking stuff and LinkedIn and stuff like that. So only 30% of the things are actually like found on like a job site, stuff like that. So it requires them to really reach out to other people and to know who to talk to, which can be difficult. But if they learn it sooner rather than later, especially in adolescence, they're able to know how to apply those skills in job placement and also retention. And also, I saw like a great impact of employment services on people with disabilities, kind of how job coaching plays a role in it, and kind of being like the liaison between the job seeker and the employer, kind of like helping bridge that gap and kind of knowing exactly what to do. I know I didn't mention it, but I just wanted to thank a few people. First of all, JC for having me as a Sonoran You Said trainee. It's been a very great program. I really liked working with everyone. It's been really informative, and I really appreciate that experience. And I also want to thank Vanessa Zuber, who is one of the cohort members, but also is my supervisor for workability. It's kind of the reason how I found out about this position. So I really thank you for all the things that she's done, as well as Dr. Wendy Parent-Johnson, who has been side by side with me for my research project, which will also be about employment services. And right now I'm making the proposal for that this semester, but I'm planning on continuing that next semester and seeing long-term benefits of employment services and how we can look at barriers to take care of any disparities. So with that, that's all.
Thanks, Nicholas. All right, we have our next presenter, Kayla.
Hi, everybody. My name is Kayla. I'm a senior in the Neuroscience and Cognitive Science Department, and I'm a student with the Certification in Developmental Disabilities. I, like Jordan, also did some work with the Reed Park Zoo this year. I participated in 2 separate projects. So I worked in increasing accessibility in the workforce and in the guest experience. So I helped to adapt a training that a few trainees made last year to apply to not only the docents at the zoo, but the entire zoo staff, as well as be able to be presented in a virtual manner. I also worked on site at the zoo with some students doing work-based learning and having their first job as volunteers at the zoo, and really got some experience with job coaching, but also what working at the zoo looks like. The Reed Park Zoo is a hub for community engagement and education. And so in this space, we were looking at what universal design looks like and how that could be applied to all different types of jobs at the zoo. And I also really wanted to see what it looked like to work specifically at the zoo as a staff member with a disability. So, like I said, I worked as a volunteer with the zoo with the work-based learning program with job coaches. I helped adapt a previously made training and made scripts into case studies, one of which is shown at the bottom of the slide here. We changed a video type based scenario to be more of a case study so that it could be presented and questions will be posed. This particular one is about a docent holding a snake and interacting with a guest with a visual impairment and how that interaction should go. We also did different situations such as interacting with a guest with Down syndrome and a speech impediment and how that could affect a guest interaction. We were giving this presentation to the zoo staff this upcoming Saturday, which is extremely exciting. My goals within this project were to apply the pillars of universal design to all the roles at the zoo, as well as presenting to zoo staff to educate them on interacting with guests with disabilities and gain experience on what working with the zoo looks like. Overall, I really enjoyed this experience. I engaged in a lot of different things and really learned what it's like to work with the community as a whole and what that looks like in the workforce, but also as a zoo guest. And every aspect of my experience kind of came together to give me different facets of what working with the disability community looks like on all different levels. So some of my takeaways at the zoo, universal design is ensuring accessibility of educational and all other experiences for guests. Universal design can really be applied in any situation through positive interactions and having that, using the supplies that you have to create positive interactions. And anyone can work, we all just need different forms of support. Some ways that I got to see this were in observing the job coaches just redirect these student workers to change their attitude about something or just refocus on the zoo guests, and also physical supports like cheat sheets and cue cards that had the information that they needed to give to these guests on them, just in case they did forget, which I think all of us could find helpful. I would like to give a special thanks to Dominique Hughes and Corinne Winston, who are the two students who started the zoo presentation project last year. Also to JC Farkas and Lynn Oland, who helped support me through that, and to Lori for helping me have an on-site opportunity at the zoo.
All right, thank you, Kayla. Our last presentation in the inclusion category is a group presentation from our diversity fellows. It's Jolene, Leah, and Rayshawn.
Hi, everybody.
Oh, go ahead.
Okay.
You go.
Hi, everybody. My name is Jolene Santos. I'm a senior at the university. And my major is criminal justice, and I am a diversity fellow.
Good evening, everyone. Leos Inchimañavo Quechimalea. My name is Leah Guerrero. I'm from the Pasco Yaqui tribe here in Tucson, Arizona. I am a second year Master's of Public Administration student, and I will turn it over to Rayshawn.
Hello, everyone. Ani Abjigik, Rayshawn Ramon. I come from the Tohono Nation. I am a senior at the University of Arizona, major in anthropology and a minor in American Indian Studies.
And today our group will be presenting on a project that we've been working on for the last few months called Indigenous Stories in the 21st Century, using multimedia projects to uplift voices and carry traditions. So the purpose of the Diversity Fellowship is meant to bring students from historically marginalized backgrounds and invite them into the world of disability policy, practice, and research. While each of us have been working on our own separate projects with the USED, we've been involved in a journey of knowledge and learning with each other to truly understand and learn more about disabilities, ableism, and how disability intersects with race, especially with regards to Indigenous communities. We've been exposed to a variety of guest speakers and organizations, as well as a variety of topics related to exploring Indigenous culture and disability. And from this, we've come to know and understand that the voices of those with disabilities exists in every part of our tribes, from the children to the elders, from our friends to our family. And because the voices of those with disabilities have been marginalized even in our own tribal communities, we wanted to create some projects that would really amplify these voices. Each of us are really passionate about pursuing a higher education and believe that the stories of Indigenous students pursuing a degree are powerful and deserve to be told. So we decided to pursue projects where we tell multimedia stories of Indigenous students with disabilities pursuing a higher education and their educational journeys. And I'll turn it over to Rayshawn.
And so the reason why we have this background is because we wanted to focus on Indigenous students with disabilities who are pursuing our higher education. We feel like that Indigenous students in general voices don't have a voice when it comes to being heard. And some of that we want to focus on disabilities. And so how we done it was we interviewed Indigenous students from the Pasco Yaqui tribe and Tohono Nation, where they shared their journey in education. And like that too, on how oral tradition has been a big part of our culture. And so like that too, it's been like this for thousands of years, where we shared different histories, languages, songs, and it still plays a big part in our culture today. And so I'll pass it on to Jolene.
So the process through everything was brainstorm a project that explores stories at the intersection of disability and Indigenous populations, and then we created interview questions and choose a platform that can tell a story, and then develop a concept form and process that honors the storyteller. Some of the interview questions that were asked was, we just asked the individual to introduce themselves, including their native community of where they came from, where they go to school, and anything else they wanted to share. Excuse me. And then what it means to them to be an Indigenous person receiving a higher education with the person with a disability, I'm sorry. And then what advice or suggestions would they give to their younger selves? And what about other youth from their community?
And so in terms of future steps for this project, as you can see, like the first bullet point says, record interviews via Zoom. I think when we made this poster, our interviews were scheduled, but as far as I know, majority of them have been complete. And so the next step really is focusing on crafting the story alongside the storyteller or the person that we interviewed. And we really want to allow them to have full primary control and input on how they want their story to be told. We specifically crafted a consent that makes it very clear that if the storyteller wants a certain part of what they disclose to be taken out or something changed, that they retain full artistic control of their story. And this is really important to us in this project because historically, Indigenous communities have not been afforded having ownership over their story, and neither have disability communities. So it's really particularly important in this case that we may be helping craft the project, but the storyteller is ultimately the one making the decisions. And so once the audio of the story is edited, we're going to overlay this audio with photos that are significant to the story and the storyteller. So that might include photos of the community that the storyteller grew up in, or perhaps the college that they're attending right now. And the finished product will be a video. It'll probably look like a YouTube video of the story that the storyteller chooses to tell, along with the images that they choose. To conclude, we know how powerful these stories can be, especially how great of an effect they can have on Indigenous youth, and especially Indigenous youth with disabilities. We really just intend to showcase the many paths that exist to pursuing a degree, and the many paths that exist to achieving your dreams if you want to pursue this. Our hope is to give these stories back to the people and organizations that have helped us throughout our time with the Sonar and USAID. So that includes gifting the story back to the Sonar and USAID and JC and Julie, as well as our own tribal community education departments. And our biggest highlight is that everybody's story is different, but everybody's story deserves to be celebrated. Did either of my partners want to add anything to that?
No, I think that's it.
All right, thank you. All right, so now we've reached the Q&A portion. Does anyone have any questions for anyone who presented it in our inclusion group?
Don't be shy. You can type it in the chat, or you can raise your hand or unmute if you have a question. Okay, we have one in the chat. Where will those stories appear? Do any of you want to share?
Well, I guess the first thing that I should say is that the full ownership of the video will entirely be in the hands of the storyteller, and they're graciously letting us share it with the people that we want to gift it to. So, you know, if the Sonoran you said, and if JC wants to show our project to maybe the next set of diversity fellows, or if they end up working with Indigenous youth through TOCC in the future, like by all means, they'll have the video to share. I don't know if it's planning on being like uploaded anywhere, but I know as far as right now, like the Sonoran you said will have those videos to use whatever they feel is fit.
And I can add that when we have them, we will share them and make it available to everyone, either through our website as well, and probably social media. So let's see, Lasia, go ahead.
Yeah, I have a question. So my question is for Nicholas. I was just wondering whether these services are like free to disabled individuals, or whether you have to like pay for them. And if so, are there like fee assistance programs? Just because I know that obviously like as a disabled individual, it is harder to get a job. So how do you like pay for these services if you don't have a job?
Yeah, that's a really good question. So from what I've seen, I'm still kind of like in the works of it. But I know when I had to close out one of a member, I had to get a pay stub and get like their information, like what they have been given from their job. So from that, it's kind of like more of like a job retention. So that one, and they kind of determine what the cost is, but it's relatively low. And there's always ways to make sure that they get their services at a reasonable cost. We do also understand like that could be like one of the barriers that like maybe this service can be more affordable than another service. That's kind of one of the things you want to look for, but there is like a relatively low cost, but that's something else that we can look into for either the summer or next semester.
That makes sense. Thank you.
I actually had a question for the two presenters working with Reed Park. So for your projects, for the improvements that you're making at Reed Park Zoo, do you is there a plan to collect like feedback from the community once these changes are implemented?
So part of my survey was was asking people if they would be willing to participate in a feedback program at the zoo. And so I think it was 20% of people said yes, and around 28% of people said maybe. So we have their contact information to reach out to them to develop a feedback program to evaluate any changes that are made or anything that they think should be made.
I have a question for Kayla, who was at Reed Park Zoo. And I'm curious how you felt the other workers at the zoo did with the student workers. Like, you know, and having them working alongside them.
Yeah, I feel like the general attitude was pretty good. Just generally from what I see, I'm not there a whole lot, and neither are the students. They're there for about 2 hours a week, and I'm there for one of their 2 hours a week. But from what I've seen, like I haven't seen another zoo employee interact poorly with any of them or any of us who work with them, which is pretty good.
And then we do have another question in the chat from Brianna. To the Indigenous Stories group, after your experiences, what recommendations do you have for designing projects that empower and respect the creative control and autonomy of participants you are recruiting?
Well, this is a really good question. I guess all of us come from the reservation, like all of us come growing up super Indigenous and knowing kind of like the systemic barriers that we faced as first gen students, as trying to get a higher education. So I guess understanding the role that how research has historically been done in Indigenous communities, we all came with that knowledge of knowing that it has generally been done in kind of a disrespectful way, in a way that was very exploitive. Oh my God, I can't say that word, but done to take advantage of Native communities. So I think we had that knowledge before we started this project, but something that we didn't know, none of us identify as having a disability, and all of us really grew and learned from our experience with the USAID what it means to have the privilege of being an able-bodied person, and recognizing that there are a lot of people with disabilities on our reservations or off the reservation, a lot of Indigenous people with disabilities. So I guess the first thing that I would say is really being aware of the privileges that you have when entering a community, especially a community that you're not familiar with. Doing some research on your own beforehand, and maybe not putting the labor on the community itself to inform you about what you should be doing. And just being respectful and ensuring that the power balances are equal with who you're working with. I hope that helps.
That was wonderful. Thank you.
Thank you.
And then
Okay.
I just wanted to do a quick check. Rishan, I saw you turn your camera back on. Did you have anything you wanted to add to that?
Yeah, I think
question?
Leah kind of pretty much just touched base on everything like that too. I just wanted to say that a lot of times it was always like a one-sided story, especially when it comes to Indigenous history. And like that too, that could be really destructive to the heritage or to our culture. And a lot of times that has been done historically. And like, well, pretty much just Leah kind of just touched, talked about everything. And just to get you guys know that Native voices do matter when it comes to these conversations, especially in a university setting, I should say. But yeah, thank you.
Thank you.
Great, thank you. That was a great first session to get us started. And I think we'll go ahead and move to the next group.